Chapter 3, Part 2. Mystery shrouds Ireland after Rome's noble retreat. From the tragic day when the last Roman officer gave the order to cast off from Dover, a dim mist hangs over Great Britain and Ireland. The legions and their eagles fought their way back to Rome, a terrible and noble retreat, but behind them stayed the Christian missionaries. The struggle of these great-hearted men against Druidism is a story we have lost or was never told us. In Ireland, I doubt if ever there was a great priesthood or following of Druids as there was in England and Brittany. We have nothing in Ireland like Stonehenge or Carnac, or even the small Druidic circles of Cornwall. Our round towers, about which so much has been written, seem to have all been bell towers of churches, like the campanelles of Venice, or watchtowers against the Norsemen coming by the sea. The rapid development of Christianity in Ireland is marvellous. We had a host of saints in Ireland, like Columkill and Bridget, and our hermits who lived in their beehive cells were innumerable. They left Ireland for Cornwall, like St. Byrne, whose buried oratory is called Byrne Zabulu, or St. Byrne in Zabulu, properly in the sands near New Quay, like St. Maugan. About these saints there is the legend that they floated across on millstones, which I take to be a vulgarization of the fact that they brought their altar stones with them, containing relics of other holy ones. Brittany gives shelter to St. Briac near Dinard, to St. Ronan at Lacronan, in Finisterre, to St. Bouduc at Plurin, to St. Fiacre at Le Fayette. The name Fiacre is still a not uncommon name in Ireland. The strange thing about this Irish saint is that he gave his name to the French cab, which might lead some foul, irreverent man to ask whether he, of all the Irish saints, did not float across to Brittany on his altar stone, but in some miraculous manner use the traditional Irish jaunting car. Rich monasteries attracted Norse raiders. The monasteries and churches founded by the Irish Christians, such as the great abbey of Clonmacnoise, drew the eyes of the ravaging Norsemen, and under their splendid leader, Thorkils, they made as thorough a conquest of the country as could possibly be imagined. It is a curious fact, but of the coins found in Ireland, there are none minted by Irish kings. Many bear the inscription of Cunut and Ulaf e Divilin, or Ulaf in Dublin. The Irish scholar Dude MacFirbis writes of the 10th century, Erin was filled with ships, viz. The ships of Byrne, the ships of Odvin, the ships of Griffin, the ships of Suitgar, the ships of Lagman, the ships of Ergbala, and so on, the ships of Ingen Row, the Red Maiden. All the evils which befell Erin until then were as nothing. They used to kill Erin's kings and carry her queens and noble ladies over the sea into bondage. The Danish scholar Warsack has given a list of Norse kings of Ireland, compiled from Irish records, which extends from 853 in our era until 1200. Kings of Dublin, kings of Waterford, kings of Limerick. Many of our place names in Ireland show how extensive the Norse dominion was. The three provinces of Ulster, Leinster, and Munster have the Scandinavian ending star or stir. Even Ireland is a Norse form. Ear is our name for our country. The word land is not in our language. The victory of King Brian over Norsemen at Clontarf was so complete that Macpherbus says, "And then there was not a threshing spot from Howth to Brandon in Kerry without an enslaved Dane threshing on it, nor a quern without a Danish woman grinding on it." King Brian rid the island of the Norse. Norse chroniclers, whose accounts I regret to say are more trustworthy than the vivid histories of the Irish monks, give a more reasonable report of the battle. The Norse admit that the Danes of Dublin, marching to effect a union with the forces of the King of Leinster, were caught in a thoroughly faulty flank movement by the Irish general. Their cavalry were useless in the foothills. As they retreated towards Clontarf, they were massacred in taking to the sea. The power of the Norsemen in Ireland had been diminishing owing to internal troubles in the Norse kingdoms and to the lack of new emigrant blood into Ireland. That the victory was thoroughly Irish, I dispute, for King Brian, like most Irish chieftains of his time, was so closely inter-allied with the invaders' families as to be more than half Norse himself. His rise to power was through the aid of the Scandinavian princes, and his attack on King Sigtryg of Dublin seems to have been of an unwarranted treachery. Brian was the father of Teige and Donn by Cumlud. Cumlud was also married to Anluf, King of Dublin, by whom she bore the more famous Dublin King Sigtryg, Skilles Jarg Silkbeard. Thus Brian's two sons, of whom Teige afterwards married More, a daughter of the Dublin king Erc Magog, also a Norseman, were half-brothers of their father's enemy, King Sigtryg. Irish Christianity seems to have had a mollifying effect on the Danes, whereas it bent the Irish no whit. The great Norse king Olaf Tryggvason was baptized by an Irish abbot on the Skellig Isles. An Irish princess, Seneva, was later held to be a saint in Norway. Her body was deposited over the high altar in Bergen, and on the 8th of July the Norse celebrated an annual mass in her honour. In Iceland there is a fjord named after St. Patrick on the northwest coast of the island. How the British came to Ireland. On the banishment of Dermot MacMurrough, one of the Irish High Kings who followed Brian, he appealed to Henry II of England to help him, offering to become his vassal. Henry gave MacMurrough leave to enlist any subject of his who was willing, and such in plenty the Irish prince found on the Welsh marshes. The Earl of Pembroke Strongbow was his chief adherent. Robert Fitzstephen, Maurice Prendergast, Raymond Fitzgerald, Le Gros were the first to help him. They were steadily followed by a stream of English, Welsh and Flemish traders. The Norman knights, mercenary soldiers, were given grants of land by the High King in return for their services, and from these lands the Irish clans were unable to evacuate them. The Normans fought with bowmen, followed by mounted infantry, hobbliers in chain armour, and against these the Irish clansmen could not stand. Also, the Normans had considerable military experience against English, Greeks and Saracens. The Irish had no knowledge of any but guerrilla warfare against the Danish kings. The history of the succeeding centuries is the history of the Normans consolidating their power in Ireland. De Burgo in Connaught, de Courcy in Ulster, Fitzgerald and de Lacy in the south. The Normans in Ireland sent quantities of men and treasure to England to assist their liege lord in his wars against the Welsh, French and Scottish. Their suzerainty in Ireland was benevolent. The Irish chiefs rebelled against them for the same reason that the modern Arab of Syria rebels against the French mandate. He objected to strongholds such as the Normans built. He objected to the policing of the country. He objected to any policy which kept him from grazing his cattle where and on whose lands he liked. In the War of Scottish Independence and after Bannockburn, O'Neill of Ulster invited Edward, Robert, Bruce's brother, to come and be king of Ireland. He was crowned at Carrickfergus and was terribly defeated and killed himself at Farhart in 1318. Many of his soldiers did not return to Scotland, but remained in Louth, in Armagh, and down in Antrim. Elizabeth reconquered Ireland. Though the Scottish invaders were defeated, yet the victory was so costly as to break the Norman dominion in Ireland. A century and a half later, Queen Elizabeth had to reconquer the country. From the Tudor time onward, the history of Ireland becomes definitely English. The Irish chiefs either warred with or against the Tudors' enemies, not so much in a struggle for independence as in a struggle for and against the world power, possibilities of which England was beginning to see in herself. For some time after, the Irish wars split definitely into a religious camp, following the English division of those who believed that the state and religion must march hand in hand, and those who believed that religion must be above the state. Until the Battle of the Boyne, this insoluble problem was uppermost. The first clear bugle note of freedom came in 1798, when out of America and out of France the idea of independence strode forth startlingly naked and muscular. As to freedom and as to religion, there is no speaking of rights or wrongs. One retires to the rocks by the sea and broods a little space, and then joins the men by the singing river, as our Irish song The Rising of the Moon has it, or he sees the recruiting sergeant where other men are hearting themselves with the cry of king and country. These things are between God and you, and so beyond judging. Irish profit by defeat. The rebellions of 48 and 67 were echoes in Ireland of the voice that called to the Hungarians and the Poles. With both races we have some mysterious bond. The rebellion of 1916, which made Ireland free or changed nothing, according at what conclusion you have arrived, was either abominable treachery or clear-headed heroism. You take your choice according to the politics. We are a nation of losers, some men has said, but with that point I cannot agree. For if the Danes got much out of us, we got more out of them. Our women have many of them hair of red gold that no sovereigns in a march's till can equal. The Danes left us their taste of gaming. The Normans gave us a love for and an understanding of the horse. Bruce left his soft-spoken Gaelic in the highlands of Northern Ireland. The men whom Cromwell left behind burned with a fire of love for Ireland. King William's men were the fathers of the men of 98. Tales of defeat give us great figures. Owen Roe and the younger Hugh O'Neill and Patrick Sarsfield savagely fighting to cover the flight of the cowardly and ungrateful James. What young soldier's heart does not rise at the thought of General Napier Tandy and General Arthur O'Connor and Colonel Miles Byrne? Will Robert Emmet's speech in the dock be ever forgotten? Is there any Irishman in the King's red coat whose heart does not beat the faster at the name of Lord Edward Fitzgerald? We are a poor country as to money, but we have purple heather and mountains golden with course, and rivers great bosom and friendly where men may dream. And the sea is kind to us. Our fields are green as the prophet's banner. We do not, thank God, as a people hesitate when the heart calls one way and the head another. A nation that is ever prosperous, always wise, seems to me a nation forsaken by its angels. One can see its inhabitants. They are tall and thin, with bodies cold as a fish's. They have long heads and foreheads like a woman's bare knee. They are dressed in black. Their eyes are not merry. Their dynasty of monarchs, for they will have sound, reasonable monarchs, are called the Marth the wise, Rigger the opulent, Hanno the pious, Ning the far-sighted. They are the people who always do the right thing. They will go to power and glory everlasting, where also they can go, each stout man knoweth. And that concludes chapter 3.